Have you ever felt that the more you talk about your plans, the further they seem to drift away? As if the world listens to your ambitions just to test, challenge, or even ridicule them. Maybe you once trusted someone, opened your heart, shared your dreams, and all you got in return was doubt, discouragement, or silence. That's where the invisible pain begins, the pain of dreaming big in a world that thinks small. And this is exactly where Stoic wisdom steps in, like a silent key that unlocks real success, the kind that doesn't need to be announced, just lived. What if the secret isn't shouting your goals, but cultivating your mind in silence? What if the successful people you admire know something you don't, that strength lies in restraint, clarity in silence, and real power in mental discipline? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul remains undefeated when it remains silent." Maybe you don't need more noise. You need a method, one that aligns inner greatness with discreet action, a path that doesn't seek applause, but evolution. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you already knows. Thinking big is about vision, but acting in silence is about wisdom. So subscribe now. Here you'll learn how to apply Stoic philosophy in practical ways to strengthen your mind, eliminate distractions, build solid results, and earn respect without begging for attention. If your desire is transformation, clarity, and emotional mastery, you're in the right place. Take a deep breath and prepare to dive into the silent method of the truly victorious. Have you noticed how the wisest people are often the quietest? While many shout to be heard, the truly successful listen to understand. Stoicism teaches us that noise comes from the ego, but strength comes from awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul strengthens as it retreats," meaning power isn't shown to the world, it's mastered within. And mastering the mind requires silence, not escape, but presence. Because in silence, your mind reveals what it's truly screaming inside. Most people react without thinking, speak impulsively, act out of anxiety. But the successful pause before reacting. They understand that mastering themselves is the first step to mastering outcomes. When you silence doubt, haste, comparison, something shifts. You stop seeking external approval and begin listening to your internal compass. And when that compass points to what's essential, focus, clarity, self-control, everything else falls into place over time. A trained mind isn't shaken by insults, doesn't get lost in distractions, and doesn't waste energy on what it can't control. Seneca said, "Nothing is more admirable than remaining calm during the storm." And that calm can be trained. It starts with simple habits. Observe before replying, question before acting, wait before deciding. When you're at peace with your choices, you don't need to justify them. That's a superpower, to act without explaining. Successful people don't react to the world. They study it. They use silence as a weapon and thought as a shield. While most exhaust themselves proving their worth, the Stoic accumulate strength, strategy, and self-mastery. And when they finally act, their decisions seem precise, almost magical. But it's not magic. It's self-control, the result of hours of reflection, self-awareness, and silence. When you begin protecting your mind, you start protecting your outcomes. You say less and do more. You observe instead of rushing. Silence stops being an absence of sound and becomes a presence of awareness. Not silence from weakness, but from wisdom. Only those who've mastered themselves have the freedom to choose when to speak and when to let their actions do the talking. Comment: I choose to protect my mind. This phrase is more than a comment. It's a decision. And it leads to the next step. Realizing that thinking big isn't about talking too much, but thinking with purpose. Many people confuse thinking big with talking too much, as if saying your plans aloud was the same as achieving them. But the Stoics knew that true planning doesn't happen in public. It happens in the silence of a disciplined mind. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury." And that difference begins behind the scenes. Thinking big in Stoic terms isn't about telling the world your dreams. It's about building a mind strong enough to carry them, even when no one believes in you. The rush to speak comes from the fear of doing, as if by talking, you are seeking validation. a response, support, praise. But the validation that matters comes from action. When you plan in silence, you eliminate distractions, others' expectations, and emotional noise. You create a sacred space where only you and your vision exist. And in that space, you adjust your path, learn from mistakes, and sharpen your strategy. Because a peaceful mind plans with clarity, and clarity is what turns a wish into a purpose. Those who talk too much give their plans to the wind, and the wind changes. Those who think big and act silently, on the other hand, guard their vision like an architect guards a blueprint, safe, protected, waiting for the right time to become real. Seneca warned, "There is no favorable wind for those who don't know where they're going." That's why so many get lost, because they speak what they haven't yet understood. When you stay quiet and plan, you connect with something rare, emotional strategy. You learn to choose your battles, recognize timing, discern what deserves your energy. While the world screams for instant results, you plant with patience. This is the Stoic's greatest investment, in time. He knows time reveals what impulse hides, so he doesn't rush, he builds. Because for those who think deeply, success isn't about luck, it's about preparation. Ask yourself, what am I thinking today that will shape my reality tomorrow? This pulls you out of autopilot, it puts you in control, and most importantly, it frees you from the anxiety of proving something to others. Elevated thinking doesn't scream, beg, or rush. It builds. Comment: I choose to think with vision, not haste. This statement seals your commitment to inner evolution, and it prepares you for the next step. Understanding that acting in silence isn't omission, it's strategy. Have you ever been underestimated for staying silent? Called cold, arrogant, or distant because you didn't explain your next move? In a noisy world, silence is mistaken for weakness. But to a Stoic, silence is armor, a shield that protects your energy, your strategy, and your peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best way to defend yourself is not to become like them." When you act silently, that's exactly what you do. You refuse to engage in empty games or ego battles. You stay focused on what truly builds. Wisdom is knowing when to speak and when to let your actions speak for you. Those who have clarity of purpose don't need to prove anything. While many exhaust themselves explaining or begging for recognition, the Stoic acts. Seneca said, "Great souls are silent." And perhaps that's why history's greatest builders chose to act silently. While others debated what to do, they were already doing. Silence is not a mission. It's choosing where to direct your energy. Every explanation given to someone who doesn't want to understand is a brick removed from your foundation. The successful person filters. They don't react to every critique, don't explain to everyone, don't chase validation. They keep building. And over time, results speak for themselves. Not to prove, but because consistency becomes undeniable. Silent action requires maturity, emotional control, because the urge to show off, respond, or prove yourself is strong. But when you train your mind to act without an audience, you grow, and that growth is internal, solid, real. It doesn't need likes or applause. It's held up by conviction, not approval. You begin living for what's real, not for what's seen. Acting in silence is also respecting the timing of things. Not every victory needs to be announced. Some wins only you will understand, and that's okay, because what matters isn't what others see, but who you become. In this way, silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where you build away from distraction, comparison, and approval. What's built there has roots too deep to shake. Comment: I act in silence but with purpose. This phrase is your mental armor, and it prepares you for the next step, discovering how silent presence commands more respect than empty words. Have you noticed how some people walk into a room and shift the energy without saying a word? That's not by chance. It's presence, and presence is the reflection of inner peace. A Stoic doesn't raise their voice to be heard. They carry an authority that comes from inner clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What doesn't affect you inwardly has no real power over you." That's why silent presence is so powerful. It reveals who is still at war with themselves. While many use their voice to hide insecurity, The successful use silence to express balance. Presence isn't about imposing, it's about being whole. When you're whole, you don't need to force. You don't need to shout, prove, or control. You simply hold your space with steadiness and grace. And interestingly, the more you stay quiet out of wisdom, the more people listen. Because silence carries a power noise never will. The kind of presence that commands respect is built over time. It's born from discipline, doing what needs to be done, even when no one sees. Keeping your word even when it's hard. Being kind even when it's not deserved. That creates something invisible but powerful. Coherence. And coherence attracts respect. People might not understand your calm, but they feel it. They might not agree with your stance, but they respect it. Because you're not a performer. You're real. The Stoic understands that silence isn't absence, it's containment. And containment is an act of strength, not weakness. When you learn to contain yourself, you become trustworthy. People notice that you don't act on impulse, don't spill emotions everywhere, and think before reacting. In a chaotic world, that kind of person becomes a reference, a lighthouse. Being present is more than being there. It's impacting without trying to impress. It's touching without shouting. It's transforming without forcing. That takes rare emotional strength, the kind the Stoics practice daily. Not to be perfect, but to be whole. Because in the end, those who earn true respect aren't the loudest, but the most consistent. Comment. I choose to be presence, not appearance. That decision can change not only how others see you, but how you feel walking through this world. Have you ever wasted energy trying to explain your pain to someone who didn't want to understand? Entered a debate and left feeling emptier than before? Stoicism reminds us that winning arguments might feed your ego, but guarding your mind strengthens your soul. Seneca said, "The higher you rise, the more discreet you must become." And that discretion applies to emotions too. It's not silence out of fear. It's choosing peace over pointless battles. Those who need to prove they're right aren't truly at peace, but those who guard their mind have already won from within. Protecting your mind begins with knowing where it's being exposed. Misplaced words, useless conversations, unnecessary criticism. These are invisible cracks draining your strength. The successful don't engage in every dialogue. They don't reply to everything, involve themselves with everyone, or try to convince those who won't listen. They protect their inner structure because they know leaving a conflict isn't cowardice, it's wisdom, emotional maturity, choosing growth over petty battles. Guarding your mind is like tending to an internal garden. You don't let just anyone walk in with dirty feet. You learn to notice who inspires you and who drains you, who uplifts and who poisons. Marcus Aurelius said it clearly, the quality of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And to have quality thoughts, you must protect the space where they're born. That means filtering words, environments, social media, opinions, not to isolate, but to care for your inner world. It's easy to fall into the trap of reactivity. But the Stoics trained their minds daily to resist impulse. They knew one moment of rage could destroy a lifetime of reputation. More than that, they knew an unguarded mind was vulnerable to manipulation, doubt, and guilt. That's why they built routines, journaling, emotional reflection, thought questioning. Not to control everything, but to stay centered, steady, guarded, in the midst of chaos. You can't control what others say, but you can control what you let in. And that changes everything. Because when you guard your mind, you stop reacting impulsively and start acting with intention. You choose your words, thoughts, and repeated behaviors. Over time, this makes you untouchable, not because you're immune to pain, but because you've learned not to drown in it. The successful aren't dragged by any current, they are anchors, they are rock. Comment, I choose to guard my mind. This phrase becomes the first pillar of your inner fortress, and it prepares you for the next truth. It's not about controlling everything, but mastering yourself even when everything around you is falling apart. Have you ever started something excitedly, only to quit halfway because results didn't show quickly enough? That's the trap of hype. It excites gods but doesn't sustain. Quiet consistency, which may seem boring but is strong, is what turns ideas into realities. Stoicism doesn't celebrate grand beginnings. but great continuities. Seneca wrote, "It's not because things are hard that we don't dare, it's because we don't dare that they're hard. What most lack isn't excitement, it's discipline." The successful build in silence. While many quit when applause fades, they keep going. They know real progress is nearly invisible at first, when the world still doubts and no reward has arrived. Yet they continue, because they don't depend on external motivation, but internal clarity. Every small repeated act is a vote of trust in the future they're creating. That takes maturity, faith in oneself, the courage to act even without praise. Consistency separates dreamers from doers. Everyone dreams, but only the disciplined plant daily, even without immediate fruit. The Stoic mind isn't driven by emotion, but by principle. It doesn't need adrenaline to move forward. It needs purpose. That's why those who think high and act silently build deep foundations. And deep foundations support high structures. What seems small now, done consistently, becomes massive, but only if you don't stop. Most people start on impulse and give up at the first resistance, not the Stoic. He prepares for resistance, anticipates obstacles, trains patience, embraces delays, because he knows consistency isn't glamorous, but it's unstoppable. It goes unnoticed until it surprises. When everyone else is tired, he's still there. When all are distracted, he stays focused. When no one believes anymore, he keeps building. You must choose, do you want to impress fast or build slowly? Because impressing is temporary, but building transforms you. To do that, you must love repetition, routine, the simple. You must be brave enough to do what no one sees, values, or claps for. In time, the world notices. What was once invisible becomes undeniable, and what was consistency becomes harvest. Comment: I choose quiet consistency. This choice protects you from emotional swings and positions you as someone who builds with roots, not with rush. Have you ever failed in silence, processing it all internally, felt a pain no one saw, and still had to keep going as if everything was fine? Silent failure, as harsh as it seems, is one of the greatest Stoic training grounds, because in those moments, with no applause, no understanding, no help, you discover your true strength. Seneca said, "Adversity reveals the genius, prosperity conceals it." Failure isn't defeat, it's refinement. The successful don't broadcast every fall. They fall in silence, rise in silence, and come back stronger without needing to tell their story. That's not coldness, it's self-control. Knowing not everything must be explained, only transformed. Turning pain into power takes an internal process, seeing the fall not as an end, but as part of the path. Stoicism teaches that life is training. Every failure, a lesson. Every loss, a redirection. When you stop fearing failure, it loses its power over you. You begin to see beauty in mistakes, value in trying, and wisdom in starting over. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way." That changes everything. Problems stop being sinkholes and become steps upward, but only those who silence the ego can see this, because the ego wants to appear perfect, but the soul wants to grow. Failure, when treated with wisdom, becomes fertile silence. That's where real turning points are born. You stop blaming and start owning. You stop expecting recognition and start building consistency. You stop dramatizing and start applying. And suddenly, what once felt like weight becomes fuel, strength, fire. Falling in silence also teaches compassion. You start seeing others' failures with less judgment, because you know how it feels. You've been there. That emotional maturity makes you wiser, deeper, more human. There's no real wisdom without digested pain, no true strength without conquered fall, no solid success without embraced failure. Comment: my failure strengthens me in silence. This redefines your pain and prepares you for the last step, discovering that true Stoic success isn't about shouting victory, but living with inner greatness, even when the world doesn't yet applaud. How many times have you seen people flaunting success while secretly falling apart inside? How many masks have you witnessed? The world is full of empty victories, and Stoicism warns us, don't confuse applause with fulfillment, nor fame with peace. True success needs no stage. It shines in how you sleep peacefully, how you handle chaos, how you stay whole when everything collapses. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And wise thoughts create an honest life. The stoically successful don't show off what they have. They radiate who they are. Their presence speaks. Their silence teaches. Their discipline inspires. They don't build identity on titles, numbers, or image, but on virtues, strength, courage, serenity, consistency. These qualities don't go viral, but they hold everything together. And even in silence, the world feels it. True success is quiet, because it's not about proving, it's about living. You don't have to say you're winning when your energy radiates peace. You don't need to say you've made it when your life speaks balance. That's only possible when thought aligns with action, emotion with reason, purpose with practice. The reward for wise living is freedom from needing others' approval. You become light, selective, calm. You stop being driven by others' urgency and start respecting your own rhythm. Your routine becomes your temple. Your habits become your shield. And with each silent decision, each invisible sacrifice, each step toward what matters, you build a success no one can take. When you realize it all begins and ends within you, the game changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop depending and start leading. You stop begging and start deserving. Most beautiful of all, you realize you don't need much to feel whole, just peace with who you are and the life you're building. Comment: "My success is internal, and no one can take that from me." Take a deep breath and feel the shift inside you. Maybe a quiet awakening, maybe clarity you hadn't felt in days, or simply the certainty that there's a better, wiser, more aligned path with who you want to become. Stoicism isn't just an ancient philosophy. It's a new lens to see your life with more presence, focus, and peace. And it all starts with one choice. Think big, but act in silence. You no longer need noise. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. From now on, each decision can be a seed, each silence a fortress, each elevated thought a foundation, and it's in your hands. The question is, which of these attitudes will you practice today? If this content strengthened you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and join us in this journey of silent, powerful transformation. The success that truly matters isn't the one people clap for. It's the one you build in silence, and no obstacle can destroy.